Is Levi Onwuzurike a bust? And more importantly, is he a bad football player? Because while those two things are usually linked with players like Zach Wilson, Jamarcus Russell, and so many other top picks that never panned out in the NFL, there are a number of players that carved out very strong, long NFL careers that could still be considered busts through the NFL draft process. Players like Jadeveon Clowney, Chase Young, and Ezekiel Elliott are all players that you could never argue were bad at the NFL level, but you could certainly argue never lived up to their draft potential. They were never really all pros. They never dominated long enough for them to truly be considered generational talents. And yet, again, nobody would look back on their careers and say they were bad football players. And I think that is the category that Levi Onwuzurike is going to find himself in. I don't know if you'll find a Detroit Lions fan that's going to argue he was the best player at 41 or even that he was the best pick in that situation. But I think when it's all said and done, whether it be his time in Detroit or his NFL career in general, we're going to look back on him and say, okay, well, he wasn't a bad football player. He contributed to the team. He was a positive impact when he was on the field. And I think a lot of teams would be lucky to have a player like Levi Onwuzurike in their roster. So in this video, we're going to answer a few questions. Is Levi Onwuzurike a bust? Is Levi Onwuzurike a bad football player? And was he really the first major miss of the Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell era? Well, to get into that, let's take a look back. After spending 4 years with the Detroit Lions and 3 years as a Washington Husky, Levi Onwuzurike was selected in the second round of the 2021 NFL Draft, the 41st overall player selected in said draft class. And unlike many of his draft teammates, unlike many of his draft classmates, Levi Onwuzurike actually got a second contract with the team that drafted him. In the 2025 offseason, the Detroit Lions signed Levi Onwuzurike to a one-year extension to keep him in Detroit, worth $5.5 million, with really a smaller market than most analysts and most people believe that he would have. NFL Network and many NFL executives ranked him as being a top 50 free agent in the class, speaking to both the weakness of the free agency class this year and just not being nearly as deep or strong as in years past, but also speaking to the fact that Levi Onwuzurike was one of the more underrated players in the class. A player that led the Detroit Lions in pressures a season ago has become a fairly consistent interior pass rushing threat, had a market at the NFL level. Now, that market didn't seem to be as large as some people predicted it to be, so he comes back home. He comes back to Detroit worth $5.5 million, still a nice, sizable contract for a player of his skill set and caliber, but not a long-term deal that I think a lot of people were expecting. Going into the offseason, there were people projecting him to get a 3-year, $42 million contract. And while that, of course, did not come true, I still think Levi has value throughout the NFL. Going back to his Washington career, he played 39 games for the Huskies, battled through some injuries, but played a really strong form of football. 95 tackles, 17 TFLs, and 7 sacks later, Levi Onwuzurike was looked at as one of the best, if not the very best, defensive tackles in all of the NFL draft that year. It wasn't a super strong defensive tackle class, but Levi was looked at as a player as a quick pass rusher, good hands, explosiveness off the line, but of course the big concern being his injury history. Levi, going back all the way to high school football, struggled with injuries. He missed time due to injuries, he missed snaps, he missed drives, he missed games due to injuries, and that was really the first major thing that everybody spoke about. They said, yeah, he was a good pass rusher, yeah, he has good tape, yeah, he's a good football player, but how often are you going to see that good football player actually playing on the football field? And for a long time in Detroit, that was true. Despite playing 16 games in his rookie season, he battled through his back injury a lot. It prevented him from really truly being a dominant rookie, and even though he had good moments, you could tell that the back was bothering him for a majority of his rookie season. He went through surgery in between his rookie and sophomore campaigns, and that surgery would keep him out for all of 2022. He played just 10 games in 2023 before finally putting it all together in 2024. The final season under his rookie contract, Levi became a really strong player for Detroit and put up career-high numbers in sacks, TFLs, pressure rating, and so many other categories that saw the Detroit Lions bring him back. Throughout his 4 years in Detroit, or really 3 years, excluding 2022, Levi has played in 42 games for Detroit. He has 68 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 4 TFLs, 16 quarterback hits, a forced fumble, and 2 passes defended. His best season as a Detroit Lion came as his most recent one. In 2024, Levi Onwuzurike had 22 pressures. That led the team after Aiden Hutchinson went down with injuries. He had more than Zadarius Smith. He had more than any of the pass rushers on the defensive line, more than Alim McNeill, more than DJ Reader, and really was a consistent pass rushing threat for Detroit. He had 13 quarterback hits, which again was a career high. He had 1.5 sacks, which was a career high. He had his first career forced fumble and really had a good season. It wasn't an all-pro type of season. It wasn't a Pro Bowl caliber season. And I don't know if Levi has that potential still left in his game. I don't know if Levi can ever really take off from where he is right now. He might cap out at being a 2, 3, maybe even a 4 sack type of player from the interior. But if you can get 20 to 30 pressures a year from a rotational interior pass rusher, that has value in the NFL level. You're going to play for a long time if Levi can continuously put those things up over and over and over again. And while he may never be an all-pro, he may never be a Pro Bowl caliber talent, he's always going to have a role in the NFL, which is something that 95% of the players throughout the league cannot say. He's had a longer NFL career already than what is on average, and I think his career is only getting started. He is still fairly young for the position. He is still fairly young for an NFL player. I think he has a bright future ahead of him. His 2025 role is going to be as a pass rusher, right? He is the Detroit Lions' best interior pass rusher with Alim McNeill on the bench. And while I think Tyleik Williams is good, I think Mekhi Wingo can be a good rotational player as well. Levi is far and away the best player for that role. He can rotate from the edge rusher position all the way through the defensive tackle and play every spot on the defensive line. He is solid at rotation and continues to be better and better throughout his NFL career. He improved from his rookie season to last season, and then I think he will improve yet again going into 2025. If Levi can stay healthy, which of course is the big concern, I think he has a long NFL career ahead of him. I think he could be a 10, 15-year NFL veteran who's always going to contribute 5, 4, 3 sacks for an NFL season. He's always going to be a consistent pass rushing threat, a player that, again, is never going to put up elite football numbers, is never going to put up 10 sacks, will never be in the conversations with Chris Jones, with Kenny Clark, with, Aaron Donald type of numbers, but he's always going to be a solid rotational piece. And looking at his time with the Detroit Lions and looking at the depth chart, there is certainly a role carved out for him. Alim McNeill, DJ Reader, and Tyleik Williams are all run stoppers first. While Alim McNeill can certainly get to the quarterback and Tyleik Williams had 11.5 sacks at Ohio State, they're all run stoppers. They are all designed and put in place to stop the interior run. Levi Onwuzurike is really the only pass rusher. Mekhi Wingo is as well, but being a 6th-round pick and having a very limited sample size, it's hard to put him in the same conversation as Levi Onwuzurike. The other players in the roster, Roy Lopez is a run stopper. Broderick Martin is a run stopper. So the only real pass rushing specialist on the defensive line is Levi Onwuzurike, who again last season led the Detroit Lions in pressures, and Mekhi Wingo, a player that showed quite a few flashes as a 6th-round rookie, but didn't even get a career sack. Had just 3 tackles throughout his rookie season and was less impactful than I think a lot of people remember. I think a lot of people remember some of the pressures. A lot of people remember, there was some good pass rushing moves. There were some good opportunities to get to the quarterback, but he never quite got there. And I do think that is a concern. I do think it's something that Mekhi Wingo will work on going forward. But Levi is the only truly productive interior pass rusher the Lions have. And in particular, with Alim McNeill not being on the roster and not being active and able to play through the first likely 8 to 10 weeks of the season, Levi is the only real opportunity and really the only option to pass rush from the interior. Taking a look at Levi Onwuzurike's career, I think he'll be remembered as a solid player, having a strong role on multiple NFL teams, got a second contract from the team that drafted him, a longer-term option, and I think he'll have a long NFL career. He's going into year 5, but I could see him going into year 10, 11, 12 as an NFL veteran and continuing to get contracts, continuing to be kind of a journeyman across the NFL, and really carve out a nice career for himself throughout the National Football League. So, to go back to the questions that we asked at the beginning of the video, is Levi Onwuzurike a bust? I think it's pretty hard to argue that he's not. Being the 41st overall pick, there was expectations that he would be Chris Jones. There were expectations that he would be a 7, 8, 10 sack player from the interior, and I don't think he's ever going to meet those expectations. And at the end of the day, that's what a bust is. A bust can be a good football player, but it's a player that never reached their ceiling. It's a player that never reached the expectations put upon them through the draft, and I think it's fair to say Levi is that player. Is Levi Onwuzurike a bad football player? I don't think so. I don't think you could say that about a player that led his team in pressures, a player that got a second contract for his team, a player that carved out a really nice rotational role with his team, and a player that has already exceeded the NFL average for the length of his career. I don't think you could argue that he was a bad football player at any point throughout his career, and I don't think you can argue that he's going to finish his career being remembered as a bad football player. And the most important question, is Levi Onwuzurike the first major miss of the Brad Holmes era? I don't think he is. Do I think he was a miss? Potentially. I think you could argue he was somewhere between really a slight miss and kind of a meh type of player. But I think if you asked any NFL general manager in the second round, if you got a player that had a nice role in the team, got a second contract, played for your team for 5+ years, and was a good quality contributor to that team for 5 years, I think most NFL general managers would take that. Because looking at the top 50, looking in the first round, everybody expects a Pro Bowler. Everybody expects an All-Pro. Everybody expects a good franchise cornerstone piece. But the reality is that just doesn't happen very often. The reality is the first round hit rate success is somewhere around the 33 percentile mark, right? 1 out of every 3 NFL draft picks in the first 32 picks turns out to be a good quality long-term football player. 2/3 of the players in the first round alone become NFL busts, don't get second contracts, and are out of the league before their rookie contract even expires. And that number drops significantly on days 2 and 3 of the NFL draft. I think if you were to ask any general manager if they would take Levi Onwuzurike's career for a day 2 selection, I think most of them would say yes. So I don't think that he was a big miss under Brad Holmes. I don't think he was the first major miss in the class. I think he gets a little bit more hate than warranted because of how good the draft class around him was, with Penei Sewell, Alim McNeill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Derek Barnes, Alim McNeill, all of those really good players. But I think that he's still a good football player. I think he's still a rotational football player. And I think he's a guy that will be in Detroit for quite a long time and have quite a bright future. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Let me know in the comments down below your opinions on Levi Onwuzurike. I'd love to hear them down in the comments below. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.